welcome to the Great Awakening Show. I am Joanne, Divine Life Yogini, and on this week's show, back again, we have Justin Carpenter. In this show, we discuss the most terrible, taboo crime of child sex trafficking, with over 8 million children going missing every year, and an estimated 5.5 million children trafficked in our world. We are here to awaken people to this crime and to give out the message to the evil ones that God's children are not for sale. Justin Carpenter is an awakened, heartfelt man who shares his wisdom of Christ consciousness within and divine knowledge about our world on his Telegram channel, on his website, and he creates incredible divine truth shows with Charlie Freak on the Freak Sense TV Rumble channel.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Justin, welcome back to the Great Awakening Show.
Thanks, Joanne. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. It's been a minute since we've connected, but each and every time it's like no time has been lost, and that's how you know it's a real connection. That's how you know it's something good, because every time I experience these shows, it's always very uplifting, which is very indicative of you and the energy that you carry with you. So I want to thank you for doing that, and thank you for continuing to spread this message in that way. It is so important.
Thank you so much. It really is. It's so important for us to get together and, awaken others and speak our truth. And for this show, God's children are not for sale. It's, 8 million children go missing in this world every year. That's a statistic. That's just unbelievable. Justin, what is happening to these children and why?
Well, this is the same thing that's been happening since the dawn of time, really, where there's always, in our fallen form, when we fall to our lowest possible wavelength, the most sick and vile form that we can fall into, it's this progression through this desire to take and steal and prey upon innocence and purity. Because when we're unwilling to acknowledge our own inherent connection to divinity, which is that purity, then we abandon that. And the only way to truly sustain is if you're stealing it from something else. And we can recognize this even from the smallest interactions, where we have people in our lives where you don't really feel very good after you've spent time with them. You don't really feel very uplifted after you've interacted with them. That's vampiric energy harvesting right there. Unconsciously, people aren't aware of what they're doing, but somebody you might know is always complaining or just dumping their problems on you, but they're not really wanting to go into the solution. So in that moment, they're using your uplifting light energy to harvest off of and try and make themselves feel better, but it doesn't work that way. But it does create this sort of pattern that goes and goes and goes. And the further you fall, you eventually get to this space where you're willing to harvest and steal from the purest and most innocent you could possibly imagine, which is our children. And this comes in all forms, through cannibalism, but some of the most egregious and I guess famous now at this point forms of it are the adrenochrome harvesting, where that innocence is harvested from these children. Their adrenal glands are taken out, often eaten, or the fluid is extracted, and this is used as a drug to get high off of, and as a feigned attempt to preserve their life by stealing life from others. So it really is about as disgusting as you could possibly imagine. I mean, there are instances of uh, like torture through sex slavery and using the gratification that way. I mean, that's why hedonism and that pursuit of pleasure is such a dangerous thing to pursue, because it does move to that direction. And you see it through the porn industry and things of that nature, where it gets more and more violent. It gets more and more disgusting, depraved, until you're at this point where you suddenly have a desire to have sex with a child. And so that's another big aspect that these depraved individuals are using this, harvesting children, trafficking them around, and then creating a whole industry based off that. So whatever these sick, depraved people want to do with the child, that's what they're paying for. And it becomes a multi-billion-dollar industry that is just earthwide, and it's absolutely disgusting.
Absolutely. It's like they cross the line, like they get, their desires, these people, it just becomes worse and worse and worse. It's just it's unthinkable, this. And the thing is, though, it's human child trafficking is modern day slavery, isn't it? It's like it's taken over the arms trade. It's soon to take over the drug trade, they reckon. As you said, $150 billion industry. That's just unbelievable. Who is selling our children? Who is doing this? I mean, and how do they do it? How do they do it across countries? Tell us how you think and what you've heard and about who is behind this at the highest, or it's just awful.
Yeah. Well, at this point, largely the large scale operations have been taken care of, but we still have the sort of lower level minions that are still continuing to steal children. And so anytime we see, like, in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, the milk carton kids as became very famous, where people saw all these children that were printed on the milk cartons. I mean, this became such a common theme that people started to just disregard this as something to look for. So it can happen anywhere. The sort of there are different. It's like a whole underground market where the child's pictures are first offered up, and if somebody has a bid on them, then somebody will go and kidnap that child in order to sell it. Or perhaps after they've already been kidnapped, then the pictures are paraded around and the bidding wars go. This happens at lots of major events such as the Super Bowl and professional sports games. There's a lot of when you have betting on sports games as a cover for exchanges of money, then this provides cover for these sickos to put up lots of money and trade for these kind of people. You have art exhibits as another cover form where they sell live art, and that's how they're able to transport these children and these people through the system in that way. Because if you're selling live art, that becomes a customs sort of loophole to where they don't open the crate, they don't open what's in it because of a potential to ruin the art form. But this is just a disgusting practice that they're able to transport and ship people in this sort of way. So it happens in a myriad of ways, but it's just, of course, there are often discoveries of it. But when you have a whole system that's designed to look the other way, it does get pretty nasty and pretty bad pretty quick. So I'm not saying this to depress people in this state where we are now, because we know that the white hats have taken control, and that is largely, and so we're just seeing the fallout of this. It's very important that we learn about this, because this is what was happening. This is what was happening underground, probably the worst parts of it, all these deep underground cities and transportation systems where these rats and these cockroaches could scurry around under cover of darkness and do the most heinous of acts, conduct their experiments in all sorts of horrific ways. And so that's all been largely cleaned up. But like I said, we're not out of the woods yet, because the lower level minions, and there's still just this sick and diseased state of being. There's still plenty of pedophiles out there. There's still plenty of people out there that are willing to do the most horrific of deeds. So until we get to this final disclosure where all is revealed, it is important to be vigilant and be mindful of the fact that your child is it's a valued prize. We have this idea that money is the source of power in this society, but it's really not. No. At the highest level of how this world was controlled, it was this trading of children. That was the prize. It was this harvesting and targeting of innocence and purity, and that's the most valued prize in anyone's mind. I mean, it is all about the children, but for those of us who are righteous, it's about protecting that and recognizing that that's the gift that we have to preserve. And the sick, distorted, perverted eyes, that's the gift that they want to steal and harvest and do whatever to.
I mean, it really has come to a point this is the great awakening that we're going through, for mankind to go so low as to have no empathy. These are sociopaths, aren't they? They've got no empathy for another human life. They are just sold, as you would sell a pig, as you would sell anything. It's just a commodity, is there any retribution? How can they come back from this? Is there any saving these people who are in this and who have performed, these acts of such atrocity to these beautiful children?
Well, there are lines that once are crossed, the mercy is ending that individual's life and giving them another opportunity to get it right once again. So the Bible
they
speaks about this very
they can
clearly.
reincarnate again to choose a different path. Yeah, to become righteous, to turn to the right, to become righteous instead of going.
Exactly. Jesus describes, better to tie a millstone around the neck and toss you into the sea than to hurt these little ones. So when those kind of crimes have been committed, it means that soul has made the decision to abandon all sense of connection, and it is best to give them an opportunity to try again, to go through the reincarnation process and to atone for what they've done. I'm sure there are cases, it does get tricky at points where people who are turning a blind eye or allowing this kind of thing to happen, how deep do they actually know about it? And it is very compartmentalized. It is very difficult to see the full scope of it, and it's designed that way. So there are going to be plenty of, and there have been, because there have been plenty of trials and things going on behind the scenes. There have been plenty of executions that have already happened through the most heinous of people. But as we have everything revealed, it is going to be a deciding factor for all of us to go through this process of where do we draw this line? Where has this line been crossed? Where can we offer a path to redemption in that space with someone who maybe was unaware of what they were participating in? But there have to be severe consequences. There has to be this realization that this is not okay. You can't just abandon your sense of right and wrong because you're following orders or just doing what you were told. And this applies to everything. It's not just about, of course, this is the darkest example of it. But even going so far as people who demanded that their employees got the jab, like that's something that has to be considered, whether that individual gets fired or whether they have to spend time in prison. It will be something that we all have to decide. So justice is coming. Yeah. Justice will sweep through the land and cleanse it in the ways that it needs to, so that all these wrongs can be righted once again.
Yeah. And it's like these people who commit these crimes, They have forsaken God. We all have a choice, don't we? Do we not? We all have a choice to go with the ego, to go with, negativity, Satan, or to go with our righteous true self, which is that godly soul consciousness that we're all connected, that we all have within, which is that one soul, that one soul of God that we all have within. But it's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. This is happening. And the most thing that really gets me is this subject is so taboo, right? This is how they've got away with it for so many years because, oh, I can't talk about that. Oh, no, I'm not going to watch that. I can't watch that. No, stop talking about it now. I don't like it. Right. Excuse me. That's how they've got away with it because no one acknowledges it. No one talks about it. No one brings it out into the open. We have to bring it out into the open, right? Because if we do not enter and acknowledge the darkness within our world and the darkness within us, how can we reach up and bring it into the light? They're going to get away with it. They're going to get away with it. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And then they're going to come after our children. That's what's going to happen if we don't stop it, if we don't bring it out. And this is what Mel Gibson said. Awareness. When people are aware of it, it's the one thing in the world that is going to unite humanity together, is it not?
Absolutely. And that aspect of wanting to deny or hide away from it it's a defense mechanism because once you have to do something about it. Once you are aware, then you have to really, and so at a deep level, those who are still refusing to acknowledge this is happening or wanting to deny it, they know this, that once they start to realize this, that they have to start questioning their entire lives and they have to start doing something about this. So that's why there's so much resistance to this, because we've fallen so far into this slothful complacency that it's going to take a lot of work to pull ourselves out of it. And that's what they know, and that's what they're resisting. But absolutely, this awareness is key. And and this is going to be this is the biggest thing that will unite everyone into realizing just how far we had fallen. When we have this disclosure, the women will cry and the men will see red. They will be in such rage and such anger that, and we will all experience this level, this wave of grief and anger, both at the same time, and then waves of either of them as we realize just how far we'd been fooled and how deep we'd fallen into this hell. How deep we'd fallen into this just disgusting depravity. But that's necessary. It's necessary that we go through this emotional wave so that we remember and that we don't ever fall into this again. It's necessary that we experience this pain of going through this realization. That's why Q talks about pain quite often in the drops, because it's not just for the bad guys. It's not just for them to experience that. We did this. We are responsible for this reality that has been created. It's not to take on the blame and the shame and fall into guilt and that kind of thing, but we do need to take ownership that we were asleep at the wheel. We let this happen. At some point, we decided it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it to call out this wrong. I knew it was wrong. We all know the difference between right and wrong. We have that gut feeling built into our system. That's a God-given ability that we always have. But somewhere along the way, we said it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it to fight against this system that, of course, is designed to get us to move away from that inherent knowing of right and wrong. And so we fell further and further and further. And we are all responsible for the depth that we have fallen to. So it's important that we take this and go through that emotional wave to have that imbued within us, so that, the beautiful thing is that God can transmute even the most horrific of things into the most beautiful of revelations. And that's what we're going to have. We're going to go through the darkest night of the soul so that we can springboard and go into the most beautiful dawn that you could possibly imagine. And it's amazing to imagine that, but we're not out of the dark points yet. We still have to go through this realization of some pretty intense stuff. So buckle up for that.
Yeah. And the suffering, the contrast, the suffering is needed because people have to experience that suffering. They have to experience that contrast. So you can't tell people. You have to make them experience it. It has to affect them so that they stand up and they say no more. And so that we will not allow this to ever happen again. Because otherwise, in 50 years' time, when it's all forgotten about, or 100 years' time, they're going to come back and it's going to happen again. Yeah. This has to be something that it was the worst thing that ever could, ever happen. So that it's a point in history. It's the 0 point, where we all come together, every uncle, every, auntie, every mother, every father, every brother, all people, we all come together. And this is the one thing that's going to do it. It's just, what a great awakening. What a great awakening. It's just crazy. It really is. And I want to get on because President Trump, right, 2020, he signed many executive orders and bills into law to educate and prevent human trafficking. He gave 40 million in anti-trafficking funding to enhance investigations, prosecutions, and to help the victims. And this pushed 150 countries to do the same and make stronger, laws against human trafficking, right? But President Trump has just endorsed this new movie, right? And called The Sound of Freedom, right? And have you seen this movie?
Yes,
Okay.
I have. It's
I want you to tell us,
spectacular.
please tell us, because our audience, we can't get it over here, right? I seen it in, pirate, right? I saw it. But it was really bad and we couldn't get it. But I think it's coming at the end of August, beginning of September. Yeah. So please tell us all about and how it made you feel in The Sound of Freedom.
So it is so well done in the sense that it's a great segue. It's a great bridge for a wider audience to be introduced to what this trafficking is like. It's not overly graphic. It doesn't show the most heinous or horrific of scenes or violence in that kind of way. But the feeling that you get as you go through this story and you really relate and you connect with Jim Caviezel as Tim Ballard, and you really connect with the children that he's going after and aiming to help, and you really go and go through that full experience of what something like that was and this is really, kind of the beginning of Tim Ballard's career of going really deep into this child rescuing acts. He was the movie begins with him showing him where his focus was really on catching and hunting the pedophiles within the US, but then it shifts into this realization that he hasn't really been rescuing the children. He's just been going after the pedophiles, which is important, but it's the children who are still out there, and you take out one pedophile and then another one pops up. So it's going through this progress of what he has to go through to get to this realization. And I have been told that there will be sequels to show the further advancement of his career and his operations that have undergone. And I mean, it's powerful. It is very powerful. And the feelings that you get from it, the range of emotions that you experience while watching it, just that intensity that you're feeling as the movie credits roll, and then Jim Caviezel's message comes on at the end, just really explaining the horrors of this trade and this industry that has been going on for so long. So as far as as far as a disclosure, this is so well done, and in the sense that it's geared for the public. It's geared for everyone to have a warm up to this idea of human trafficking, what it's done. So I highly recommend it. I thought it was just absolutely spectacular. One of one of the best movies I've seen in that space. It was really good.
Yeah. And the thing is about this movie, they couldn't get it out for 5 years, because it was stopped. Yeah. And they only, in America, it was only shown at so many movie houses, wasn't it? But as of today, it's grossed $150 million. That's just unbelievable. And it's beating all of the blockbusters. And so now they have to, the other movie houses have to show it. Now it has to come out to Europe. Now it has to, inform. I mean, it's just something that is unstoppable. And I've seen some of the people, coming out in the movie house, they're crying. The men are like, wow, and I've seen them all over the internet as well. Jim Caviezel and Tim Ballard being interviewed on all these massive podcasts with, 7 million, Jordan Peterson and JP, and I just like, wow, this is really great. For the first time, this taboo subject, is getting out to the masses, isn't it? Through this movie that Disney and no one wanted to show. Why has the media been so against this movie? And some of these truthers have been so against this movie. It's ridiculous. Why?
Well, it's sort of a twofold factor in this. So as Q said, disinformation is necessary. It's very real and very necessary. The media companies at the highest level are absolutely white hat controlled at this point. So a lot of that controversy was intentionally put out by the white hats in order to get people talking about the movie, get people asking, why are these media companies trying to push these down? Is valid questions to ask. And so that adds to interest in wanting to go see the movie, because people are already fed up with media companies in general. But you do also have lower level minions of the cabal still remaining within these media companies as well, who are still going business as usual. So they see something like this, and it's like automatic within their mind, because they're so programmed to be running this script. Anything that goes against the narrative of what they've been told, they have to try and go against, which ends up just exposing themselves even further, which is also a good thing. So it's a trap for these minions to expose themselves. Anyone who speaks out against this kind of thing, who is not, running a script from the white hats already, you're exposed now. And so they can see you, and where you stood on this. It's created a very powerful dividing point, even within the truth community, and in the spaces of people not having a problem with it. And so it shows where people stand. It shows where people either have this awareness on seeing things clearly, or for more heinous reasons are purporting that this is a bad thing to go do and see, because they've been paid to do this kind of stuff. So it does do a great job at sort of exposing people, because it's a polarizing topic. It's a polarizing thing. So you're either powerfully for it or you're powerfully against it. And then we get to see who is there. And then we remember who was really for it and who was really against it, even down to just the people watching it, the people out there who believe that, oh, this is just another Q film and I'm not going to believe this conspiracy nonsense. They're going to have that as something to remember when they go through this humbling experience of realizing that all this was real. Yeah. Where did you stand when this was coming out? What did you do and what did you say? Yeah. And that's going to sit with them so powerfully so that they'll remember that and have that realization, and hopefully transmute that so that they can never fall into that kind of thing again.
You're so right. And you know what? All them, the truth meter, whatever, who were dissing this, saying, it's been, that, you know, it's been, who were just saying how bad this movie, don't go and see it. It's really bad. It's, you know, controlled by the black hats and all this. But when President Trump, you know, did the screening of it at Bedminster, that just showed them ones who are Trump supporters. Excuse me. Yeah. This is President Trump endorsing this movie, and you've been spewing all of this negativity about this. It's like, now where do you stand? Again, this is showing, as you said in the beginning, the revelation. This is time of revelation. It's the wheat from the chaff, the truth, the false light from the true light. Where do you stand? And this is just, again, really showing it, you know, and the people see it. The people see it because they can feel it. It's their intuition. They're good people. People are good, inherently good in this world. You know, anyone who disses this, you know, beautiful, you know, Sound of Freedom movie, well, they're just covering from the pedophiles then, aren't they? You know,
whether they realize it or not, it doesn't really matter. You're still supporting that disgusting, depraved behavior if you say that this movie is bad or those behind it are bad. So it's like, at one level you feel for people because there have been sort of negative psyops put out there by Q. So there have been intentionally put out disinformation to lead people down this idea that Tim Ballard might be bad, that Jim Caviezel might be bad. And that's been done with purpose because there are still minions of the cabal out there that think this is all business as usual. So when they see this information out there, this disinformation that's being put out there, they can breathe a sigh of relief and say, oh, okay, this is still, our bosses are still in charge. Everything is still good. This movie is, you know, it's designed for evil purposes. So that's intentional because we can't have them truly know that all is lost. We have to keep them thinking that business as usual until the final curtain drops.
So they keep making the mistakes. They keep revealing themselves. Yes. Right. They think it's safe to come out. Like, you know, the pedophiles, the transgender. Yeah. They think that it's safe to come out.
Yes. And so unfortunately some within the truth community have fallen into these negative psyops in that kind of way. And they've just run with it. But it has a benefit of exposing people within the truth community of how good is your discernment. And if you're falling into these stupid little tricks, you're obviously not paying attention. You're obviously not getting the full scope of what's happening, and you're failing this test. And all of these are here to test us. They're all here to, like you said, separate the wheat from the chaff and see who's really ready to be leaders in this next space. Q has been testing all of us, and who's passing and who's failing. And so it becomes a very, very distinguishing moment in this quote unquote truth community where the majority of those within the quote unquote truth community, and I don't even really like saying that because they're not about truth.
No,
they're just about the expanding upon their hatred or expanding upon
or wanting followers, ego, how many followers I've got. That's just,
exactly. So it's doing a great job. You know, this is God's plan, and this is biblical. This is showing everyone exactly where they are, and grateful to be a part of this and to be seeing this in the ways that I do. So
I watched a movie the other day called Whistleblower. It's quite an old movie, and it was about the UN going in after the Bosnian War, you know, in Eastern Europe, and they were not peacekeepers. They went, you know, they were human trafficking, you know, but they had immunity. The UN, they had immunity. The peacekeepers. And they were all, it was just horrendous what they were doing. And it's a true story. It's a true story. And what they did to these girls was absolutely terrible. You know, human trafficking, these young girls, 14 years and old. I just couldn't believe it, you know. And it's a big cover up, isn't it? But this is the time of revelation. So
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. station that makes you feel good.
Just lastly, and this is really important to me. Please tell us and tell our audience, how can we individually help to get our message out that God's children are not for sale? How can we help this movement,
Yeah, well, it's the Sound of Freedom is a great avenue to go for and to spread and to share. So as this movie becomes available in your country, start talking about it now, start encouraging others to check it out or to look into it. Of course, be mindful of people that are still sort of stuck in the old ways, and we don't need to cast our pearls before swine. If people aren't ready to hear this, then we have to let them suffer and hold on to the lies as long as they want to. And that just means that their karmic debt that they will accrue is going to be that much greater. But fortunately, God's answer to all of that, creation's answer to that is perfect. And so everyone gets exactly what they have earned. But I'd say for those of us who want to help as best as we can, really the best thing to do is to, further spread the message in that way to those who are willing to hear it. But really to focus on the self, to focus on the self in the ways of shining brightly and really doing that spiritual healing, that holistic healing within yourself, so that you have that knowing what we know, or even just knowing tidbits of what we know, the weight and the gravity of what's coming, and this revelation that we're going to experience is going to be the hardest thing that we could possibly imagine to go through. And so those of us who have a heads up and some idea of what's coming, we have the responsibility and the duty to be that offer and support for those who will be reeling from this revelation, reeling from this grand exposure and disclosure. So the more that you can find peace within yourself and find that stability and find that strength and find that just general well-being, the better suited you'll be to step up to that duty when you're called. You'll know that moment when you're called. You'll know that moment when you're needed most. And the better that we do, the more lives that will be saved. This is inevitable that there will be many, many lives lost as this disclosure happens. Yeah. Q said 4 to 6% lost forever.
Wow.
That's a very high number. If we're looking, 5% of the population is 1 out of 20 people. Wow. We all know 20 people. We all know. So that means we're all going to know somebody who's not going to make it through this. We all are going to know people who are just going to fall into the lies, and whether it's self-inflicted or through some other form of disease or depravity, they're not going to make it. So the better that we do, and even if that statistic is correct, 4 to 6%, that's a 2% spread. The better that we do, if we can save 2% of the population, that's a massive amount of people. Yeah. So it's important that we recognize our role within this, and recognize that, yes, while I might want to go out and shout from the mountaintops and shout from the rooftops, like, hey, look at this, pay attention to this, it's not quite time for that. And that's not going to be met with that same sort of welcoming as we've experienced. I'm sure those of us who have tried to tell our friends and families about this truth, it's not always met with that same opening. So let this operation go to its full fruition, but recognize that once that starts to happen, then there's no going back, and we have to be ready for the fallout and the chaos that will happen because of that. So again, the more that we can focus on our inner growth and that inner peace and stability, the better suited we will be to offer that lending hand and support as everyone's worlds are crumbling away. So that would be my biggest suggestion.
And also, what you said, it's you can't be afraid to go into the darkness. That's why it's so important to do the inner work, going within, third eye, beautiful, God, goddess, photons of light, the love and light energy coming in. That comes into your aura, into your toroidal field. So, negativity repels that. Once you've got the armor of God, the light of God around you, you can go into any place, the darkness, and come out of it. So many people are like scared to go into their own darkness, let alone the darkness is in this world. But we are in this world of duality for a reason, to find that point of balance. Masculine, feminine, good, bad, all of it, light, dark. It's all about that balance, isn't it? Within, to keep ourselves in that place. And we must look at that. We have to look at, and we have to embrace the darkness. You can't just look at it because it's a part of us. We were it. We have been it in other lives. We've been that darkness, haven't we? We've been that awful person, but we evolved out of it to become, the light. So that's really important, isn't it? To do your inner work so that you have that armor, that light of God around you. So you're not affected by it. And this is the ascension process. How many are going to ascend into this new earth? This is what it is.
Absolutely. Well said, in the sense that, we do have to face the darkness within in order to even begin to address the darkness outside of ourselves. So that's where the work truly begins. We have to face it, and we have to recognize that it is an essential part of this duality, and transmuting that. So this shows up in all sorts of forms, but oftentimes it's addressing past traumas, even past life traumas, addressing just moments within our experience that we've been holding on to, addressing the fears that we have let guide us up to this point, and get to that space of peace and stability, so that I can wear that armor of God, and so that I can face whatever comes my way. But I can't expect anyone to do that work for me. It doesn't matter how much I listen to Joanne and her podcast. It doesn't matter how much I listen to Justin and his podcast. It doesn't matter who I listen to. If I'm not willing to actually do that work and face those demons and face that darkness, then nothing will change. So it's really important that we take that to heart and recognize how God is giving us an opportunity to do that in every experience that we're having. So when I have a moment where I get pissed off or really emotional with dealing with somebody, God's giving you an opportunity to address those demons within you. Why is that driving you to such a state of turmoil and imbalance? Why are you off-ended by what someone else says in that moment? That's an invitation to do some inner work in that moment, to really reflect on where that's rooted from. Oh, was it because my mom used to say something like that to me, and that really bothered me? And so going back to that moment of where that came from, and really addressing that. And it looks different for everybody, but the process is relatively the same. The process is relatively being humble in each and every moment, and recognizing that everything is happening for me. Everything's there, designed to uplift and move me through that challenging process of transmuting that darkness. But if I ignore that, if I run away from that, if I numb that out, if I look to food and alcohol and drugs and sex and TV and whatever other distraction to numb myself out from that, then I will continually stay stuck in that depraved sense of being, where I'm stuck within those fears, and the fears are ultimately guiding me. So it's important that we courageously stand up and say, I'm ready. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I'm ready to face whatever fears that I have, and recognize that God will give us the opportunity to do that. And he never gives us any more than we can handle. He gives us the exact right amount of what we're capable of, what we can deal with in that moment. So all we have to do is rise to the occasion and transmute that. And then we become the alchemist. Then we become that which can turn lead into gold. We gain the Midas touch. Yes. And when you're in that state of being, we all know people who are like that, where they enter a room, or every conversation they have, or everyone they interact with, it turns to gold. It turns even what can be considered a depressing occasion or event to go through, they still find that silver lining and still find that way to transmute that experience into something that's positive. So that's the gift that comes from it. We become these gold givers everywhere. We are the gold, and we're able to give it in that sense. But the only way to get there is if you're willing to do that inner work within yourself.
And I love that, what you said about the gold, because in the darkness is that gold. You can't find it anywhere else. It's like the suffering, the contrast that we have to go through. You know, we're like the diamond in the rough. It's like, you know, it takes off them rough edges, and it's the gold that we can only find in that darkness, you know, and we have to learn to bring it up, embrace it and bless it, because it's a part of us. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, the things that we've been through, you know, and that's why it's so, and then we can move on, because you know one thing, we cannot build this new earth with not bringing all of this about the children up into the light. We cannot do it. It's a shaky foundation. There's no way we can just pretend and build over it. It doesn't work that way. We have to slice it open and release it all. And then we can start building it, you know, with truth, with light, with love, with, you know, the reality. So yeah, that's true, isn't it?
Very true. Absolutely. Very true. Well said.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Wow. So it's just been another amazing, wonderful conversation. I just love chatting with you about this really important subject. And I just want to say thank you so much, Justin. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for your enlightening, beautiful, divine wisdom that you give to all your podcasts. And, you know, with Charlie as well, and Colleen, and, you know, it's so beautiful, and you keep on going, and it's just like, we're on a divine mission. It's unstoppable, you know, as is this great awakening. So I just want to say thank you for your beautiful truth that you've given to this really, really dark subject. You've brought the light to it, which is very important. So thank you for being on the Great Awakening Show again.
Thank you, Joanne. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's important that we talk about these things, but we don't need to fall into the fear or the depression. We don't need to fall into these lower states of being because of it. It's about recognition of that so that we can transmute it, move through it, and have a different space, create that new earth, as Joanne is saying. So yeah, it's really important to take that stance with it, but we can't turn away. We have to face it in order to do that. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all that you're doing as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.